Head of Economic Research at Clive Incorporated, Clive Ramathibela-Smith, joins us now in the studio. Clive, good to see you again.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, Peter.
How do you see these changes working out in a practical way?
Let me put it this way. It's incredibly important for us to move and shift because that shows that there is stability within the financial system. It shows that there's potential for us to actually move forward. And most importantly, it shows that we're able to be flexible, which is what investors look for when they look at our economy. So those are particularly important factors of our economy. But here's the question. What will Fitch think of what we have done tomorrow? And we have to take that into consideration, unfortunately. We can't just ignore it. And therefore, we are very scared that this might be the reason why they want to downgrade us, simply because they think maybe we don't know what we're actually trying to get to and we don't understand what we're trying to do. And that might just be the problem. And I'm hoping that they don't look at this and think, maybe we should downgrade South Africa. And that wouldn't be nice.
We already saw Moody's downgraded us. In your professional opinion, what do you think will happen tomorrow?
Here's two factors that you need to know about me. The first one is that I don't think that these guys actually understand the African market very well. In actual fact, if you think about it, do they know any market at all? Because if you go back to 2008 and you think about February of 2008, where they failed to understand that, in actual fact, Lehman Brothers might be just going down and about to be bankrupt. They were not able to pick that up. You can even go further and go back to 1997, where they failed to see the Asian influx, which actually created a lot of turmoil within the markets themselves. So are these guys accurate, and are they using the right model to calculate the risk that is available or that is irrelevant to the African market? The answer to that is no, I don't think they have. They've applied the same principles, because you cannot match apples with mangoes. You cannot match apples with oranges. You have to match apples with apples. And so therefore their systems are not necessarily designed for the African market and for South Africa in a special case, where now we sit as the second biggest economy in Africa. But do you actually want to put money in Nigeria? So it's one of those things that you have to evaluate appropriately, Peter, for you to actually make sense of where you need to be directing your actual investments to make sense of what you want to see as the outcome. And
just going back to 2008, you would think it would be somewhat easy to spot a prowling bear, wouldn't you?
Peter, I mean, honestly, do you have to ask? The answer to that is, if you want to make sure that you're doing the right things, you have to ask yourself, did I put money in the right place? If I've lost money, that means I didn't do the right thing. If I've gained money, man, maybe I'm doing something right. And that would be the investor's mentality, is that the FDR, the foreign direct investment that we talk about, should be aligned with regards to what actually the international market think of us. But what do we think of us? What do we make of us? How do we perceive ourselves to the rest of the market? That's more important than how the rest of the external people look at us. And it sounds like an empowerment session here with the psychiatrist who says, believe in yourself. But it's exactly that. If we don't believe in ourselves, if we don't see ourselves for what we are, then we'll lose ourselves in the translation.
Let's stay right here at home. We saw what happened today in Parliament. We've heard about Cyril Ramaphosa taking over the parastatals. Do you think that this will actually benefit the parastatals themselves?
What about the powers? Are they even? Does it mean that because Cyril has got a strong business acumen, can he actually pull more power and muscle into that particular status? The question here is, those qualifications that we've always been talking about, are they now being put into question, and will there be stringent measures to make sure that those are put into line? And that's the first question. The second question is, do you want a politician who's previously had business dealings to actually deal with this particular kind of issues? If he does, will he be successful? The answer to that is, we need to have more support from not just Labour, but from business as well, and also government, to make sure that this is actually a successful exercise. Because then at the end of the day, what we sit with is an Oscar Pistorius case, where we have to go back and re-appeal for the fact that, the sentence is not good enough. And we might have to reappeal and say, maybe Cyril is not good enough to actually run the business.
And then maybe you and I have to have a conversation in Bloemfontein, which is another situation all by itself. But let me throw this at you as well, because the other side of the coin, the conspiracy theory that maybe they've thrown all these things in the way of Ramaphosa to set him up so that maybe he doesn't get a top position that we all know about in a couple of years' time. What would your response be to that?
My response is that for South African government to go forward, you need a strong somebody who understands both business and labour to be able to move forward. I mean, he was a pivotal point when the labour liberation started, back in 1986 with COSATU and all that. And he's done well post-94 to actually get into business. But, you know, individual brilliance does not contribute to corporate brilliance, and that's the difference, and people don't understand that. The fact that you have done well as an individual does not mean that corporatively you've done well, and that's how corporate South Africa looks at you, and that's why we're still sitting with a situation where it is very difficult for anybody to influence business in South Africa, because we don't see a lot of SMMEs succeeding, a lot of SMMEs actually struggling back-to-back on month-to-month basis. So how do we influence that? And then you bring somebody who's come from business, and maybe it's a privileged position that they've come from, in actual fact, Peter. And I'm willing to take the bet for that, in actual fact. And say, maybe you come from a privileged position where you've got the BEE status there already, you've got all these things. But the average person who's struggled to come through to the ranks, to get to the level where you need to get the kind of recognition you require, does not have the same status. And that's the question we need to be asking ourselves. And if we can get that right and we can tick it off, then maybe on New Age, one day, you'll see Clive Ramathibela's financial advisory services being there instead of anybody else. But I'm being very controversial here, Peter, and you know why I'm going that side. But the answer to your question is that we need to have fundamentally strong bounds to make sure that we drive the right political issues, and as much as we drive the economic issues, they must be all correlated so that we can actually get a South Africa that works.
Clive Ramathibela-Smith, a pleasure as always.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you.